Have you ever heard this strange truth? In some ancient cultures, being ignored was considered worse than being insulted, because at least when someone insults you, they admit you exist. Now think about this. In a recent survey, over 60% of adults reported often feeling invisible within their own families. Not hated, not attacked, just unseen. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like a shadow? Your presence is unnoticed. Your voice was drowned out. Your worth questioned, even by yourself. There once was a man, kind, patient, generous to a fault. He never raised his voice. He helped everyone. But when he spoke, no one listened. When he offered his thoughts, they were brushed aside. And over time, something inside him began to die. He started to believe that maybe he didn't deserve to be respected. If this echoes anything you've ever felt, if you've been the quiet one, the giver, the forgotten, then this message is for you. Because respect isn't earned through louder words or harder fists. It begins quietly within. And today, I'll show you 5 silent but powerful shifts that can change how the world sees you, without force, without begging, and without changing who you truly are. Are you ready to reclaim your quiet strength? Let's begin. 1. Say no from stillness, not fear. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to radiate quiet authority, while others, despite their kindness, are always overlooked? It's not charm, it's not power. Sometimes, it all begins with one sacred word. No. There is a saying in Zen, the boundary between peace and suffering is drawn with a single word. That word is not loud. It doesn't slam doors or burn bridges. It simply says, not this, not now, not me. When you say yes to everything, when you agree just to avoid discomfort, when you smile even though your soul resists, you don't just give away your time, you give away your presence. You vanish quietly from your own life. I remember a time when I was that person. I said yes to every request, every coffee meeting, every favor. Because I wanted to be liked, because I thought saying yes was a sign of love. But slowly I noticed something painful. The more I said yes, the more invisible I became. People didn't thank me. They expected me. And worst of all, I started expecting myself to be small, just to be accepted. Why do we betray ourselves with such polite smiles? Because deep inside, we carry an old fear. That if we say no, we'll be rejected, left out, alone. It's not always obvious, but it lives in the nervous laugh you give when someone crosses your boundary. It hides behind the tension in your stomach when you say yes, but mean no. And it's not just emotional, it's physiological. Your brain, when it senses disapproval, reacts the same way it would to physical pain. It lights up your stress system. It triggers guilt, cortisol, and self-doubt. And each time you override your truth, that wiring becomes stronger. But there's a twist here. The approval you gain from others by saying yes is often short-lived. Meanwhile, the loss of self-trust, that lingers. Here's the paradox no one tells you. When you finally say no, people might respect you more, not less. We live in a world that rewards energy, not effort. When you bend constantly to please others, your energy becomes ordinary. It's like a bright candle in the daylight, unnoticed. But when you protect your flame, when you choose when and how to share your presence, your value grows. Think of it like this. A waterfall that never stops flowing becomes background noise, but a single drop of morning dew, resting gently on a leaf at sunrise, can make someone pause in wonder. Saying no doesn't have to be cold. The most powerful no comes from warmth. It says, I respect both you and me, and I trust that this boundary honors us both. Sometimes silence is more loving than a forced yes, and you don't need to explain your no with a novel. A simple, I won't be able to today, but I appreciate you asking. That's all. It's not about rejection, it's about alignment. When you act from alignment, the right people feel it. They stay, the wrong ones fade. And that's not a loss, that's clarity. Here's what surprised me most. When I finally began saying no, the world didn't collapse. It softened. People started listening when I spoke. Not because I spoke louder, but because I stopped diluting myself. The fewer yeses I gave, the more weight each one carried. And that's what respect is. It's not being feared, it's being felt. Of course, if you've been a chronic yes person like I was, the first no will feel like walking into a lion's den with a spoon. Your voice might shake. Your brain might scream, "What if they hate me now?" That's normal. You're reprogramming years of belief in one breath. But I promise, your future self will look back and whisper, "Thank you for not abandoning me again." So today, I invite you to ask yourself this. Who is the one person you always say yes to, even when it drains you? What would shift in your life if you just paused and chose silence instead? This is the first quiet transformation, and it opens the door to something deeper, because the next truth is even harder. It's not just about what you say, it's about what you carry. And when we carry the weight of our complaints, we block the flow of our value. Let's explore that next. 2. Stop bleeding energy through complaints. What if I told you that every time you complain, you lose a little bit of your power? Not in a metaphorical sense, but in a real energetic way. Every sigh, every retold disappointment, every "why me?" is like poking holes in your light. In Zen, there's a simple but profound teaching. What you cling to becomes your suffering. And few things are stickier than a well-rehearsed complaint. It starts innocently. You vent about your job. You tell a friend about how someone disrespected you. You replay a bad memory again and again, hoping someone will finally validate how wrong it all was. But here's the truth. The more you talk about it, the more it owns you. Your identity starts to shape itself around that one unfair thing. You stop being the person who once dreamed, and you become the person who's always disappointed. You stop being a presence and become a problem. But why is it so hard to stop complaining, even when we know it doesn't help? Because complaining feels like control. It feels like we're doing something with our pain. But really, we're just decorating the prison. There's something oddly comforting about being the victim. It gives us a story. It permits us to stop trying. It even gives us attention, at least for a little while. But that attention is fragile, and over time, people begin to pull away. Not because they don't care, but because they feel powerless around your powerlessness. That's the painful twist. When you speak as though you are broken, people don't rush to fix you. They instinctively protect their energy and distance themselves. What we repeat becomes who we are. Your brain is not just a storage space, it's a pattern builder. Every time you tell the same painful story, especially out loud, you deepen that groove. The neurons fire faster, the reaction gets stronger, and soon even moments of peace feel suspicious. Like, why is nothing going wrong today? It's almost as if you're addicted to the familiar ache of complaint. But here's the good news. That same pattern can be reshaped. And it doesn't take a miracle, it takes awareness. I remember someone once asked me, "Do you ever get tired of hearing yourself talk about your problems?" It hit me like a soft slap from the universe. I didn't even realize how often I had turned conversations into therapy sessions. I thought I was being open, vulnerable, honest, but I was just leaking. And that leak wasn't just costing me my peace, it was costing me my dignity. So I made a quiet pact. If I needed to process something, I'd start with my journal, not with people. I'd allow myself space to feel, to rage, to cry. But I would no longer outsource my emotional regulation to others. And you know what happened? People began to lean in again. They didn't know what changed, but I did. I stopped carrying the heaviness of my story into every room I entered. Your words are spells. They create the reality around you. If you speak as if life is cruel, your world will echo that back. If you speak from presence, even when life hurts, your energy becomes magnetic. Complaining is not just emotional, it's vibrational. The more you focus on what's missing, the more missing pieces appear. It's not karma, it's resonance. And when you complain often enough, even good things feel thin, like they can't land in you, because there's no space left to receive. Of course, some of us are champion complainers. We could win medals. My barista gave me the wrong milk. My cat doesn't cuddle anymore. I think my basil plant resents me. We laugh, but we also know it adds up. And those tiny complaints, they shape how people feel around us. Even if we're kind, helpful, and loving, the weight of constant negativity dulls our glow. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. The world doesn't ignore you because of your pain. It turns away because your pain speaks louder than your presence. But you can shift this. You don't have to pretend everything is fine. You don't have to fake joy, but you can choose where your pain lands. Write it down, speak it to the sky, kneel beside a stream and let it hold your anger. But when you step into the world, lead with your light, not your wounds. Because the world needs your wisdom, not your weariness, and you're more powerful than your patterns. So today, try this. Take just 24 hours and observe your words, not to judge yourself, but to become curious. What story are you telling about your life? And what might happen if you stop bleeding energy into the past and chose instead to hold your ground like a mountain? In the next part, we'll explore exactly how to do that, because even mountains are respected, not because they speak, but because they are not always there. Let's continue. 3. Become rare, not always there. Have you ever noticed how people chase what they can't easily have, but ignore what's always there? Even water, the source of life itself, is taken for granted. But a diamond locked away, untouched, mysterious, becomes priceless. In the Zen tradition, there is reverence for silence. The Buddha himself did not speak for years, not because he had nothing to say, but because his silence was his teaching. He withdrew from the noise, from the world's constant pull, not out of pride, but presence. And when he finally spoke, his words carried weight, not because they were loud, but because they were rare. The same applies to us. When you're always available, always replying, always just one call away, you start to fade into the background. Your time, your energy, your presence becomes ordinary. And in a world that's starved for meaning, ordinary things are quickly forgotten. Why do we feel guilty for choosing solitude? Because we've been conditioned to equate constant presence with loyalty. That being busy equals being valuable. That if we're not always on, we'll be left behind. But let's pause for a moment and look deeper. Over-availability isn't love, it's fear. Fear that we'll be irrelevant if we're not always saying yes. Fear that people will drift away if we don't keep showing up. Ironically, the opposite is often true. When you're too easy to reach, too eager to please, too present without pause, people begin to assume you have nothing else going on subconsciously, and nothing drains your worth faster than that. I'll never forget a client I worked with, a warm, talented woman in her late 50s named Marla. She was the emotional caretaker of her family, her office, and even her neighborhood. She'd drop anything, for anyone, at any time. She thought this made her dependable, but one day her teenage son said, "You're always there, Mom, but no one listens to you." That sentence broke her heart, because it was true. Her constant presence had become invisible. So she tried something new. She pulled back. She stopped answering every text within seconds. She gave herself silent mornings. She said, "Not today," with grace. At first, people got annoyed. Then, they leaned in. Her daughter started knocking before entering her room. Her husband began asking for her opinion, not just her help. And Marla finally felt seen. Not because she did more, but because she gave from fullness, not from habit. There's an old Zen metaphor. If you place a rare flower in every room, it no longer feels special. But if that flower only blooms once a year, people gather. They pause. They admire. This is the power of intentional presence. You don't need to disappear, but you must stop being so constantly here that people forget how beautiful your energy is. Let your presence be something people look forward to, not something they scroll past. When you overgive without boundaries, the energy you offer loses its charge. It's like giving away too much light. It stops glowing. But when you pull inward, when you refill, rest, recharge, your energy returns with clarity. People feel that shift. They respect the quiet power you carry when you show up by choice, not obligation. This is why true leaders, whether spiritual or practical, are not the ones who talk all day. They are the ones who say little, but say it with full presence. Let's be honest, pulling back isn't easy. If you're the kind of person who texts back during a massage or checks emails at 2 a.m., this will feel like a detox. You'll get twitchy. You'll feel like you're missing out. But really, you're missing yourself. And no amount of external approval is worth abandoning your peace. Being constantly reachable doesn't make you noble. It makes you forgettable. And you were never meant to live as someone's background music. You are meant to be a pause, a presence, a pulse of awareness that brings stillness into the room. So I'll ask you gently, where in your life can you choose solitude over performance this week? Where can you step back just a little so others remember what it means to have you in their space? You don't need to disappear. You just need to stop diluting your worth. Because the fewer moments you offer, the more powerful they become. And that leads us to the next deeper layer, how you show up in your actions. Because being rare means nothing if your words are empty. In the next part, we'll explore how keeping your word is the most sacred form of presence. Let's go there next. 4. Keep your word even when no one's watching. Have you ever met someone whose words seem to resonate uniquely? Not louder, not flashier, just real. Their promises didn't need reminders. Their yes meant yes. Their silence meant something too. That's not charisma, that's integrity. And in a world full of noise, integrity is rare. So rare, it makes you unforgettable. There's a principle in Buddhist practice known as right speech. It's not just about being kind with your words, it's about being true, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one's watching. In Zen, a word is not just sound, it's a seed. And like all seeds, it either bears fruit or rots in silence. When you speak, you're planting something in the mind of others and in your soul. So if your words are scattered, broken, unreliable, don't be surprised if trust never blooms around you. But what happens when you keep your word and it costs you something? That's when integrity becomes alive. We live in a world that often rewards appearance over substance. We've all seen people rise through charm, not consistency, but charm fades. And when it does, the only thing left is the trail of your actions. Here's where it gets interesting. People may not remember everything you've done, but they will remember how steady or shaky your word has been. Integrity builds something subtle but powerful: psychological safety. When others know you mean what you say, they can rest around you. They don't have to second-guess, overthink, or decode your motives. Your presence becomes a refuge. I once knew a man named Eli. He wasn't rich, not especially good-looking. But when Eli said he would do something, he did it every time. When his family went through financial hardship, people came to help, not out of pity, but out of respect. Because years earlier, Eli had shown up for them quietly, consistently. One of his friends once told me, Eli doesn't say much, but if he says he'll be there, you don't even call to check. You just know. Eli lost his job. He lost money, but he never lost trust. And somehow, that trust became his wealth. He had no fancy network, but when things got hard, his life didn't collapse. It expanded. That's the invisible power of keeping your word. It creates bridges you don't even know you're building until you need to cross them. What about the little promises, the ones you make to yourself? I'll wake up early tomorrow. I'll eat healthier. I'll call my mother. We break those all the time, and we think it's no big deal. No one saw, no one cares. But you saw. And over time, those little breaks chip away at something precious. Self-respect. Your subconscious remembers everything. When you keep ignoring your word, your inner voice stops believing you. And when you can't trust yourself, your energy becomes scattered. People can feel that, even if they don't know why. But the reverse is also true. When you keep small promises, even the quiet ones, your soul begins to shine again. And that glow, it speaks louder than any speech. Your word is not just sound, it's a signal. It tells the universe, I'm ready. When you follow through on what you say, you send a vibration of reliability, of alignment, and people respond. Opportunities respond. Respect finds you, not because you chased it, but because you became the kind of person it naturally flows to you. Of course, we've all made promises we forgot the minute we made them. Like the classic, yes, I'll come to your book club. And then Thursday comes, and suddenly, your plants need watering. We're human. But if we're always the ones canceling, postponing, excusing, we don't just lose appointments, we lose gravity. People start planning around us instead of with us, and slowly we become optional. Respect doesn't come from speaking louder. It comes from speaking truth and living it. So today I ask you to reflect. What is one promise you've made that still matters? And what would it feel like to honor it, not just for others, but for yourself? Because when your words are rooted in stillness and your actions flow from them like water, your life starts to bloom in quiet, lasting ways. Now we've explored saying no, releasing complaints, creating space, and standing in integrity. But there's one final transformation that turns all of this into quiet power, reclaiming your worth, even when the world sees only your lack. Let's go there next. 5. Transform poverty into inner wealth. You're not poor because you don't have enough money. You feel poor because somewhere along the way, you forgot your value. That's the real poverty, the poverty of self-worth, and it's far more dangerous than any empty bank account. We tend to think of poverty as a lack of things, no savings, no job, no home. But the deepest kind of poverty is not outside of us. It's inside. It's the silence that grows when we no longer believe we matter. And here's the twist. I've met people with millions who feel empty, lost, invisible. I've met others with almost nothing, whose presence feels like wealth itself. What makes the difference? Not numbers, not possessions, but presence, peace, depth. The kind that grows when you realize you are more than what the world sees. The Buddha left a palace filled with gold. He walked barefoot, slept under trees, yet kings bowed to him, not for what he owned, but for what he embodied. Why? Because there's something magnetic about someone who knows their inner worth. They don't beg for validation. They don't chase attention. They sit quietly in their truth, and the world listens. This is the paradox of inner wealth. When you feel rich on the inside, the outside begins to respond. Not out of pity, but out of resonance. Let me tell you about Daniel. He lost everything in the 2008 financial crash. He went from luxury cars and designer suits to a second-hand jacket and a mattress on the floor. But Daniel did something strange. He didn't shrink. He woke up every morning, showered, dressed well, even if it was from a thrift store, and walked like a man who still had something to offer. He volunteered. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't try to prove himself. He just showed up fully. And over time, something began to shift. People started seeking him out, not because of what he had, but because of what he carried. Within 5 years, he rebuilt his business. But more than that, he rebuilt his dignity. His story stayed with me because it revealed something most people overlook. Real wealth begins with self-regard. When you carry shame about your status, it wraps itself around your body. Your shoulders curl, your eyes drop, your voice gets softer, not out of humility, but out of hiding. You become invisible before anyone even looks at you. And here's the heartbreaking truth. Most people don't disrespect you because of what you lack. They do it because you act as if what you have isn't worth anything. But the moment you reclaim your presence, the world adjusts, not instantly, but eventually. Because the universe responds not to desperation, but to dignity. Your thoughts create your posture. Your energy introduces you before your words do. And when you walk into a room believing you belong there, you start to belong. This isn't about fake confidence. It's about remembering your quiet power. You don't need to shout it. You don't need to prove it. You just need to stop denying it. And no, you don't have to start chanting mantras in a cave or pretend that unpaid bills are just abundance lessons in disguise. We live in a world where money matters, but money is a tool, not your worth. You can own a small apartment and still walk like royalty. You can drink tap water and still radiate like champagne. It's not about pretending. It's about rooting yourself in what cannot be taken away. You are not your job title, not your income bracket, not your zip code. You are the calm behind your breath. You are the silence between thoughts. You are the presence that makes a room feel safe, even if no one says thank you. So today, I want to invite you to do something small but powerful. Write down 3 things about yourself that no money can buy. Kindness, courage, wisdom. Whatever they are, those are your real treasures. And when you begin to lead with them, respect doesn't just return, it rises. You've now discovered 5 quiet transformations that shift how the world treats you, without force, without begging. But there's one final piece, a deeper invitation, because none of this matters unless you carry it forward. And in our final part, I'll show you how to anchor all of this into a way of being that doesn't just earn respect, but keeps your soul at peace. Let's finish strong. Take a breath with me, because you've just walked through 5 quiet, powerful shifts, each one designed not to change who you are, but to help you remember who you've always been. You learned that saying no isn't rejection, it's self-honor. Complaints leak energy, but silence can restore clarity. Your presence becomes priceless when you stop offering it constantly. Your word once kept becomes your signature, and your worth isn't measured in coins, but in calm. Each of these isn't a performance, it's a practice, not for applause, but for alignment. And here's the deeper truth. Respect is not something others give you. It's something you awaken within. It radiates from stillness, not struggle, from boundaries, not begging. So tonight, before you sleep, sit with one simple question. Where in my life am I still seeking permission to be worthy? Then let that seeking go. You don't need louder words. You need deeper stillness. If this message touched something inside you, write in the comments, I choose inner respect. Let's begin that quiet, powerful journey together. And if you haven't already subscribed, share this message with someone who needs it and stay close. This path is just beginning.